BYU and Utah have advantageous schedules on paper. What are the chances these two programs could have a holy war rematch in the Big 12 title game, or is one of them trying to get over the other one to face off against Texas Tech? We're getting into it on a crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes. I'm Locked On Cougars host Jake Hatch, covering BYU every single day. That across from me digitally is my good friend JT Wistrcill, host of Locked On Utes. And as always, thank you for making both of our fine programs your first listen of the day. And thank you for making all of us at Locked On America's #1 sports podcast network. All right, so coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the schedules that came out earlier this week for BYU and Utah, how things look for these two rivals. Then we're going to talk a little bit about, well, is Kyle Whittingham done pillaging both of these programs? Hint, he's not. But then we'll also talk some BYU and Utah basketball as round 2 of the Holy War on the Hardwoods plays out on Saturday. All right, so JT, here's the deal. I think a lot of people expect Texas Tech to be back in the Big 12 championship game once again in this coming December. And I think the question that I have is, are BYU and Utah, from your vantage point, are we going to be playing a game November 7th, watching game play out November 7th, that is going to determine which of these two plays the Red Raiders in Arlington, Texas?
I think it's very likely. In the open, wouldn't it be awesome if it was Utah BYU in the title game? I think that would be epic. And unfortunately, as you also mentioned, this game is November 7th and not rivalry weekend, as we continue to want it to be. But the Big 12 has their own way of going about it, unfortunately. So, look, I think Utah and BYU very well likely could end up deciding who plays Tech. It feels like Tech is going to be in this year in, year out, just with the talent they're able to assemble NIL-wise. But at the same time, Utah and BYU are very talented. I don't think Tech's schedule isn't a gauntlet either. I don't think either of us have gauntlet schedules. Obviously, you guys have to play Notre Dame. That's a tough game. Doesn't count at all for what we're talking about in Big 12 schedule matchup here. So it's big for Utah to get this game at home too. I do feel like, look, if we're just being fair, like Utah probably got worst in the transfer portal. I don't think there's any doubt about it when you look at what they lost from last season to now. They appear to have gotten worse. But you don't see Tech next year. Utah doesn't have to play Arizona State as well. That's a game that you guys do have. I think the Sun Devils year in, year out are going to be pretty good too. So I do expect Utah to still be in the top 4 to 5 of the Big 12, but I don't know if I don't think they're a better team than they were last year. So that'll make it interesting to see how this all shakes out. And obviously I do expect BYU. This is the year I'm expecting BYU to be really good. Last couple of years I've been down on the Cougars. Cougars should be fantastic this year. So yeah, I do definitely think that there's a chance that our matchup in November could lead to one of these teams ending up in Arlington against Tech.
Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up is I'm with you. I do think that this is a season that on paper, BYU should, in theory, get over the top. And what that means is play for a Big 12 title once again, make the college football playoff, had that opportunity to kind of live the dreams they've been chasing the last 2 years. But looking at it, Texas Tech, that's about as sharp and soft a schedule as the Big 12 can offer for them. And it's nothing against them. It's just the way that the schedule went, and both BYU and Utah don't see them this season. So that obviously lightens their load. Looking at it, you claim that Utah got worse in the portal, but what gives you the confidence? As you say, you think they say in the top 4 or 5. Is it Devin Dampier? Is it kind of the new era with Morgan Scalley? What gives you that confidence that Utah can stay among the elite in the league?
Honestly, part of it's the Big 12 got worse to me. It's the schedule that Utah has. You see Cincinnati without Sorsby. You get TCU without Hoover. And I just don't know if Sonny Dykes is going to be able to turn things around. It just feels like there's something stinky going on with that program. We miss Arizona State. As I already said, I think Arizona State's really good. You guys come to us. Houston comes to us this season too. We have to go to Arizona. That's going to be a tough game for this Utah team. It's also, we're talking about, yes, this is more so about the Big 12 schedule portion, but Utah should be rolling coming into conference play. I expect them to go 3-0 in the non-conference. They play an Arkansas team. SEC team. Well, rebuilding SEC team that's been very bad in Arkansas for a long time. So even though Utah's team got worse to me, they don't have to see a juggernaut in Tech. They don't go to a Provo. The Big 12 isn't as intimidating this year. Some of those other teams are. Like at this time last year, Utah's schedule had a Baylor, Kansas State, Kansas stretch that I was just like, I don't see how Utah wins all three of those games. And those three teams I just mentioned, some of the most disappointing in the conference, and Utah, even though their run defense fell off a cliff in a couple of those, they won those games. So to me, this Utah team with Dampier coming back with an upgrade overall in the pass catching corps, I feel like they've done that. Wayshawn Parker back, lot to replace on the O-line and D-line, literally the entire group almost, but some key returners and the defense still too. And Morgan Scalley, I trust the home field advantage that still is Rice-Eccles Stadium. I think Utah still has a chance to be among the best in the Big 12, despite the massive losses they've taken. Many, as we'll talk about in the second segment, due to Kyle Whittingham.
Okay, so looking at it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I've looked at BYU schedule, obviously doing what I do, and I think it's fairly decently laid out. You have an early test against Arizona. You have the Notre Dame game. Obviously, it's non-conference. You do have a tough back-to-back with the home game against Arizona State, then going to Utah. But the way things lay out, BYU kind of couches each one of these tests with some more manageable games. My opinion on Utah is that the first 6 games for Utah, they could be 5-1, absolutely rolling. But then you roll in kind of that back half of the schedule, sandwiching the BYU game. There's 3 road games, and they may not be the world beaters in terms of the actual opponents, but they could be a road weary team at that point. And let's say Devin Dampier. We found out that he played through a sports hernia apparently since the early part of last season. If he gets dinged up in the early portion of the schedule, that back half, that could prove to be the undoing for the Utes.
Yeah, it absolutely could be. And Dampier's health is something that Utah has to do a better job of maintaining throughout the season. We found out he got that injury, as you just said, Jake, in week 3. So right before Tech, and obviously at times against BYU. And there were times throughout the season where it almost looked like he looked healthier and then would re-aggravate it. We don't know that for certain, but I look in some of the games and it's like he's lighting it up. And also, I will say, against some of the better defenses, he struggled too. That probably would have been the case regardless of the sports hernias. He still has to grow as a passer, but there's no question to me. Look, he's not the biggest guy. You and I were both at Big 12 Media Day. Like we saw Devin Dampier up close. He's not the biggest guy, and they would run him in between the tackles frequently. I think Utah needs to do that as little as possible. You got to keep him upright, and if he's going to scramble, have him slide early, give up the extra yard. I don't need him fighting for every inch and blade of grass out there when the results long-term can be more if he keeps himself healthy. But you're right. There's some big road tests coming up there too, and Utah will not have the luxury of one of the nation's best pass rushers this year, barring some more crazy development, but Lewis Powell isn't here anymore, either their DN coach, and they will not have the most dominant unit in the Big 12, or second most dominant unit, maybe the Big Tech D line, I'd say. The Utah offensive line was so dominant last year. Utah loses not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, all 5 starters gone from that offensive line. That's going to be really tough for this team in this group to replace, and it's very easy to say, like Utah, even though the schedule got a little lighter, they could easily be an 8-4 team because of what they lost this year. I think there's also a world they go 10-2 again. We'll see how they all navigate it. Jake, I feel like BYU, this should be the year. Like, I don't know if they'll go 11-1 again. That's just really tough to do. But when I look at BYU's schedule, I see 10 wins right now. I mean, you probably feel the same way, right? And this Cougar team, with what they've added in the portal on top of what they return, it feels like this could be their year, especially a guy like me who's questionable of Sorsby. This could be the year that BYU takes the Big 12 title and gets the CFP, right?
Well, that's got to be the goal for BYU, because you think about it, like BYU, and we're going to talk about the retention versus non-retention in a moment of these two programs because of the Michigan question that's obviously lurking out there. But to your point, BYU retained everybody. That includes the offensive player of the year in the Big 12, and LJ Martin was the kind of the guy that made everything go for BYU. The expectation is that Bear Bachmeier takes the next step with a full offseason finally working inside BYU's program and the offense, going through spring ball with the program. Yeah, I got no problem saying the expectations for BYU, that the floor is 10 wins. Like you have to win 10 plus. And let's say you push it to 11-1 and maybe your one loss is to a top 10, top 5 type Notre Dame squad. Well, guess what? You should be right there on the precipice of the college football playoff once again. And the hope is that teams like Utah, teams like a TCU and Arizona State, that they are good enough that their strength of record that's kind of been BYU's undoing the last couple of seasons they've chased the CFP can push them over the top this time. And I know that's putting the cart before the horse because we're months and months away, but everything on paper screams that this should be the year for the Cougars.
Yep. Totally agree. And I'll really quickly say, like, I think about how hopefully the Big 12's perception somehow improves a little bit. You guys should have gotten a lot more credit for winning that Arizona game. That was a win at time. Even I was like, how good is it? By the end of the year, looked pretty dang good. So hopefully the Big 12 gets more respect, and Utah, BYU for what they do can both as well. But that Notre Dame game definitely helps you all for schedule credibility if you can get it done in Provo.
Yeah, it will be absolutely an epic clash. There's no doubt about that. All right. Well, there is a big bad Leviathan out there on the horizon that we all are trying to kind of work our way around. That's the Michigan Wolverines led by Kyle Whittingham. Is he done pillaging the state of Utah? We're going to get into that next right here on a crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, they get FanDuel is offering users a profit boost pack waiting for you inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts. You can apply to the bets you most like. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. Those boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, coaching, or whatever it might be. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. And every place feels bigger, and the boosts make your best bets feel that way too. So make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL game day, courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. And thank you for making all of us over at Locked On, America's #1 sports podcast network. JT, I know that you obviously are doing what you knew with the Everydayer Club and brand new at Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars Everydayer Clubs. If you guys want to be a part of it, get audio ad-free episodes, access to the Discord channel. If you want to go to the all access tier, get the text access that we've offered for many months now. All that available to you now. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com on my side. It's lockedonutes.supercast.com if I'm not mistaken for you, JT, and check it out, or click the link in the show notes for both of these fine programs and check out the Locked On Everydayer Club. All right. Kyle Whittingham. I should say those two words, and it conjures up a lot, I think, of angst for both fan bases, both BYU and Utah. But give me your sense, JT. Is Kyle Whittingham done rating the state of Utah, and more particularly rating the program that he called home for 30 years?
Unfortunately, it's a big fat no. There's already a report coming out from Rivals that he is talking to future Utah recruits. And a year from now, if Utah, and we'll see, right? This whole spring portal thing, like there's not supposed to be, but I just feel like there's going to be. So if Michigan has an injury or two, could they come calling again for the Utes? It's likely. But I think Kyle Whittingham has built a lot of strong connections in the state of Utah. And I think guys that were interested in a Utah or maybe leaning a Utah, once Michigan comes calling, like a Salesi Moa, the top recruit in the state, just did, they'll end up going to the maize and blue, or maize. Is it maize and blue? The maize color always throws me off. Yeah, I didn't even know maize was a thing till this whole thing happened. But Kyle Whittingham has forced me to learn. Utah's gotten hit hard by this, coaching wise, player wise too, Jake. BYU's just lost a couple. Obviously, Jay Hill is a big loss, but look, Utah's been hit hard. I don't hold ill will towards Kyle because he's given us 21 years. He's just trying to build the best team he can at Michigan too. And a lot of these guys, the coaches too, the players, they've given a lot to this team. They have an opportunity to go compete for a place in a national championship that is a more viable national championship path than at Utah. Just call a spade a spade. But yeah, it does hurt. I don't think Kyle's really tarnishing his legacy like some people do. He's still going to get the statue, be a legend and everything in my eyes. But I understand why people are frustrated. Obviously, Kyle Whittingham has caught the chagrin of BYU fans for a couple years now, right? With the rivalry just being what it is. But how do you guys feel about Jay Hill and obviously your cornerback coach too, and one player ending up with him in Ann Arbor?
I think the BYU is more okay with it than they would be had more people left for Michigan. Obviously, losing Jay Hill, that hurts. Losing Jernaro Gilford, that hurts. Max Alford, obviously, transferring over there. And I think that had, let's say, a Falatau Satuala or a Keanu Tanu, just Isaiah Glasker, like guys who could have left BYU to go chase, as you mentioned, a national title at Michigan, because that's what Kyle Whittingham is endeavoring to do here, everybody. I hate to burst anybody's bubble who has any illusions otherwise. That's what he's trying to do. That's kind of the one thing on his coaching resume he's never really been able to truly pursue is a national championship. And that's what he's looking to do with Michigan. I think had he pillaged more of BYU's players in particular, that Cougar fans would be far more irate. I think in some ways it's BYU fans are sitting over there kind of watching Utah with a little bit of a side eye saying, yeah, keep doing your thing over there. Keep taking from Utah, because obviously it weakens the Utes. It keeps BYU with all the retention that they had, that things are pretty good in Provo. But at the same time, with what we're seeing, Jay Hill's already come back to the state. He's recruiting. We heard that Morgan Scally on radio this week in Salt Lake City said he actually was sitting with Kyle Whittingham talking. So they're not stopping anytime soon about coming back here, because they know what talent exists in this state. I know that most of the country knows, but if you talk about a staff that knows Utah as well as anybody, it's the new staff at Michigan.
100%. And I think where it hurts for Utah, like, yes, Jason Beck leaving hurts, but I'll be honest, like, Jason Beck made the Utah offense exciting, elite. With the numbers he was putting up, I just feel like the top programs were going to come calling sooner rather than later. So I have a hard time believing that Jason Beck was going to be a Utah Utes lifer. Like, let's not forget, was a BYU grab. Poured everything he had into that program last year. But I'm just not saying that he was going to be a lifer. Jim Harding, the job he did with the Utah offensive line. Like, we can also, once again, just call a spade sitting here. There's many reasons Kyle Whittingham's at Michigan. But Michigan job, ask anyone in the country, it's a better job than Utah. Jim Harding would have had opportunities for really strong jobs after developing 2 first-round picks along the offensive line. And then some of the other coaches, like, yeah, Fred Whittingham's going to go with him. Lewis Powell's definitely a loss for Utah, and I think a surprising one, but Kyle did leave a lot of the defensive staff intact. And even the Smith Stones, the John Henry Dailies, those ones don't hurt as much. I think where Utah fans are really irritated with Kyle, and this is where I get the irritation, even if I don't share that irritation. Jonah Laia, JJ Buchanan. These are the next level guys where you're like, wait, what? Like, I don't even think Laia is a starter there. Like, maybe he'll surprise me and be one, like, and good for him if he is. JJ Buchanan, I'm curious of how he's going to do at Michigan. I like Buchanan in Utah. He's also didn't separate a ton. So is he going to be able to make those same contested catches constantly in the Big Ten? Maybe, but I think those guys would have had more success staying out of Utah, but they now have a chance to do big things at Michigan. And the reason they're at Michigan is just because Kyle Whittingham's familiar with them. John Henry Daly was not coming back to Utah, right? The top teams in the country were all calling. He visited Notre Dame. He nearly would have played BYU again this season, right? So that's where I think it hurts for Utah, is that he didn't just take our top guys, took some of the depth and some of these other guys that were like, wait a minute, he was on your radar? You're bringing him with him? So that's where the frustration comes with Utah. And I'm curious to see how quickly this Utah team can bounce back, having lost so many of not just their top guys, but even the second level guys that, like you said too, Jake, BYU hasn't really gotten hit. Do you feel, how much worse is BYU without Jay Hill in your eyes? Because Jay Hill's arrival there and your ascension did time up well. So that's where, if we're Utah and we're looking for a silver lining of what Kyle did to you guys, is you guys can point and laugh at everything we've lost. We can say, hey, Jay Hill's gone. That's one thing, right?
Yeah. Well, hey, here's the thing. Jay Hill came in and truly implemented the defense that Kalani Sitake has wanted in Provo for literally years. And for whatever reason, before that, Elisa Tuiaki, Ed Lamb were unable to kind of deliver what Kalani's vision was. Jay Hill came in and delivered on that vision and then some. So yes, there is no doubt that you're losing something with Jay Hill departing this program. The person that I thought that would have left with Jay, because obviously they've been working together for a really long time, was Gary Anderson. And I don't mean to sound over the top about this, but keeping Gary Anderson in Provo, even though he's going to remain an analyst, he's not going to take the DC title, which has been given to Kelly Poppinga. I think that Gary, Kalani, those two working with a new DC and Kelly Poppinga, I think you just kind of keep the thing rolling here in Provo. Yes, there is some genius you lose without Jay Hill. There's some player accountability stuff that he brought to the program that was much needed when he arrived. But I think that now that that's been implemented, you just kind of take the ball and run with it if you're BYU. So yes, while it is a loss, and the bigger loss in my opinion is the recruiting side of it, because Jay is a dogged recruiter. Like, there is just zero doubt about this. That guy gets after on the recruiting trail. I think that the brain trust of Gary Anderson, Kalani Sitake, what guy like Kelly Poppinga may lack in terms of play calling chops, because this is his first time truly as the lone DC in his coaching career, they will be able to kind of fill in the gaps for him and help him along the way. But it is a loss losing Jay Hill. The bigger loss to me, Jernaro Gilford. Here's the thing, JT. Jernaro has been at BYU, or was at BYU, as long as Kalani Sitake had been there. He brought him from Southern Utah. Jernaro was an alum of BYU. Historically, BYU's weakest position group has been cornerback. Jernaro Gilford turned it into a major strength. I have questions, and DeMario Warren is a pretty well-regarded coach coming over from Boise State, the former Southern Utah head coach, to take over that position group. Can he really keep that level up? That's the bigger question to me, because if you have good cornerbacks, that's what makes this defense go. I know that any Utah fan knows that the Jalen Johnsons, the just go down the list of the great cornerbacks at Utah. When you have elite cornerback play, this defense thrives. If you don't have that, it's a major, major question mark. And that's my question mark longer term for BYU, is can they keep this level of cornerback play alive?
That's a great point. I think for Utah, right, we're able to keep Sharif Shaw, massive win. I think he's one of the best DB coaches in the country. But I talked about Jim Harding earlier. We replaced Jim Harding with a Jordan Gross. I like Jordan Gross. That's a guy, Ring of Honor in the Carolina Panthers, did great things at Utah. And he did a good job developing Kelvin Obot, Utah's 4 or 5 star, depending on the site you look at, recruiters up on the hill. It is such a drastic jump in difference running a college program, developing these guys, recruiting, bringing them in. And the fact that he has to try and piece together an offensive line that loses all 5 of its starters right away, that's a lot that Utah has to replace. Isaac Asiata as well, like the assistant O-line coach, he's gone to now. So that's a completely new voice in that room, someone who has to navigate and learn to what it takes to succeed at the collegiate level. Fred Whittingham did a good job in the tight end room, and Devin Dampier's safety blanket was Dallin Bentley. There's a lot of unknown there for Utah right now at the tight end spot. So there's a lot this team has to figure out and replace some of those new coaches. Lewis Powell, we already talked about the job he did with the DN. So that's where I'm really curious to see how Utah navigates this. And Jake, really quick, or if you want to ask me something, you can.
Well, I was going to point out, here's the thing, coordinators, losing coordinators, BYU losing their DC, Utah losing their OC. Those are big hits. There's zero doubt about that. The bigger hits in my mind is what you point out. Guys like Lewis Powell, who is a really good recruiter, these individual position groups that these guys recruit to, that's kind of, in my opinion, the bigger hit for both of these programs, BYU and Utah, because those guys are guys on the ground. I know the coordinators are out recruiting. I get all that. And I know that Jay did a really good job in recruiting, but those individual position groups, they're critical to have the right people in those positions. And that's my question mark, if they can if they're going to be able to replace those position coaches.
Yeah, and the connections, the depth, like we just talked, Jason Beck was here for 1 year, added good recruits, did some good things. Lewis Powell, Jim Harding, they helped build the foundation of a back-to-back Pac-12 title team those years ago, a team that contended in the Big 12. Can they get back to there? We'll see. I know we got to move on to our other topic, Jake, but just really quick, I think by most standards, Kyle Whittingham at Michigan will work. I think they'll make playoffs. I think they'll win playoff games. I do not think they'll win a national championship. So in my eyes, his tenure there will be a success. In their eyes, it may be a failure. How do you think this experiment is going to go with so much Utah and BYU fingerprints on the Wolverines program?
Yes, I'm with you. I do think they make the playoff more often than not. My question is, will Kyle Whittingham be able to not be his own worst enemy and actually let the offense do what it needs to do to win a national title? The defense is going to be national title quality. I got no problem saying that. My question is, we just saw what Indiana did, and that's obviously one of their rivals that they will have to stave off in the Big Ten. Speaking of Kyle Whittingham, is he going to allow an offense like an IU or what Ohio State, his arch rival, does offensively? Is he going to let Jason Beck cook, to use that expression, offensively to really let them get over the top? I have my reservations on that.
You mean no 4th and 8 to Tobias Merriweather when you could kick a field goal? That might not fly there. We'll see how that. We'll see. Oh, Michigan fans will love that in the game. They'll love that.
It'll be dissected to no end.
Oh my gosh. But Kyle ain't seen nothing when he gets to the Michigan media, and the Utah media does a great job, but just that fan base is relentless.
Yeah. So that is my question. I do think they make the playoff, but will he be able to get out of his own way and really let the Wolverines get over the top? That's my question. So we'll see what happens. All right. We are going to finish up. We talked a lot of football today, but there is, a game on the hardwoods tomorrow with BYU and Utah squaring off. Second go round of this Big 12 season. They square off in the Marriott Center. What to expect from the rematch? We'll talk about that next. Crossover edition. Locked on Cougars, Locked on Utes. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. Tax season's not to take over your life, everybody. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. And I think all of us are like, man, that sounds absolutely awesome. With TurboTax's full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork that obviously seems to linger over all this. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out all the forms you need, you can be with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every single deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, gives real peace of mind knowing that the expert is handling it. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year, all you got to do is file by February 28th. One's got $150 if a TurboTax expert didn't do your taxes last year. Take the taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. All right, JT. The game up in Salt Lake City between the Utes and Cougars in basketball was far closer than I think anybody expected. I've always thought that when these two get together, I don't care what sport it is, the rivalry juices get flowing and crazy things seem to happen. But I do think that BYU has a little bit in reserve here where they're like, all right, we screwed around up at the Huntsman Center. We did win, but it's not going to, I think in BYU's heart of hearts, after losing to Texas Tech last Saturday in the fashion they did, collapsing in the final 10 minutes, I think they want to put a hurting on the Utes.
I saw this movie last year. BYU, Utah, close game in Huntsman. Actually, I think, did Utah win last year? I think
they did. That's
crazy. Yeah, they actually did. So they beat one last year, which I genuinely believe last year's Utah team is better than this team. I think the Big 12 got better and Utah got worse. And honestly, unfortunately, BYU got better too. Jake, I'd love to come in and talk about how this Utah team is going to be gritty. They're going to be scrappy. They're going to make plays happen. In their last 7 games, they've lost. In their last 8 games, they've lost 7 of them. They have 2 Power 4 wins on the year, a TCU and an Ole Miss team that aren't even in the same stratosphere as this BYU team. BYU playing at home, the energy that comes from a rivalry game, as you mentioned, a disappointing loss for BYU coming off of it too, an opportunity for Bonsa to put on a show. And this is one of, he's had the 30-point triple-double against Eastern Washington. He's done several amazing things this year, but if he wants to really be a BYU legend, a great way to really cement this one-year wonder that he's becoming is to really put it on Utah. And it won't just be him, right? Saunders, right? Kaba, one last revenge game for Kaba as well too against the Utes. I don't like this recipe. I feel like this is going to be a long game for Utah. Love to be wrong. And like you said, sometimes when these teams get together, anything can happen. But last year, BYU won pretty handedly. And I just think all the recipes of this cake lead to a Utah blowout, and I don't like it.
Well, and that's the thing that I'm looking at here is like, if you watch the Texas Tech game, and I know most BYU fans, I'm sure some Utah fans did as well. BYU was up 9 with 9 minutes and 26 seconds to go, and then got absolutely roasted the final stanza of that game. 32-10 was the run for Texas Tech. AJ DeBonsa had by far his worst game in a Cougar uniform, especially in Big 12 play. He got absolutely kind of shut out by Texas Tech's defense. And I think that, to your point, if he really wants to put himself down, and I think we all believe that he will go down as an all-timer at BYU if he accomplishes what he wants to accomplish. Well, if he wants to put a stamp on the rivalry, well, here's your opportunity to do just that at home. Bounce back from a poor performance against Texas Tech, lead your team to a win. I'm with you. I would like to argue back against you, say, well, I trust the Utes are going to. No, Utah's going to try. Terrence Brown, I think he's a bona fide scorer at the Division I Power 5 level in basketball. But that's just not enough. It's our evidence is it right there for Utah. I just think with the kind of the storm that's collecting here, BYU coming off that loss and wanting to bounce back, having a full week to kind of chew on it. Yeah, I think they're ready to really stick it to Utah.
And even a guy like Brown, right? I can't get the last play against BYU out of my head where his size hurt him. He is absolutely a P4 player. He's proven that in spades. Yeah. But there's a difference between a P4 player and beating. I know BYU is not ranked there right now. I think BYU is one of the top 10 teams in the country. And especially, like, I expect them to play like a top 10 team this weekend. This is the type of game where Terrence Brown drives inside, then boom, Kaba Keita pops up with a big block, and everyone at the Marriott Center is going absolutely wild. Like, who does Utah have to slow down Dumbonsa again? I don't think Utah has the defensive depth. They do not have the consistent enough scoring. Their size is a problem. Look, we can call it what it is. And I've said it on my own show. Alex Jensen and Wes Wilcox missed in building this team and this roster for this year. Guy like Ja'Kai Howard, I was really excited about coming over from Auburn. He hasn't done anything on the season too, right? Traore, the transfer from Iowa. He was all over the place. One game will give you 10. One game he's giving you 0, 2. The depth is inconsistent. You have 2 guards. That's what Utah's built on. The 2 guards and rebounding from Keanu Dawes, but even he's undersized, right? And what's the problem with those undersized guards? Speaking of undersized, once again, when you go against the best teams, it's harder to score on them. BYU's length, experience, it's going to be a problem for a Utah team that just looks like this. They're not ready for the season to get over. That's harsh, but just against teams like this, it's going to look like they're just going to get outclassed to me. I'd love to be wrong. I'm just not feeling good, Jake. I want to be an optimist, but I just can't when I look at this matchup.
Well, I just wonder if James Okonkwo will be able to get another elite block like he had on AJ up there at the Huntsman Center. Because I'm not going to lie. I think Okonkwo is coming along. I think he's a serviceable big man. He's just not at the level, and speaking of team-wise for Utah, they're just not at the level where they can truly compete game in and game out in the Big 12. I trust Alex Jensen. I know enough of him doing what I do in sports radio and being around the Utah Jazz as long as I have been, that he will get it right in time, given the resources he needs at Utah. It's just not this year. And that's a harsh reality to absorb if you're a running Utes fan, but just trust that better days are going to be ahead for Utah, where this year might be a little bit of you're kind of just write off and say, hey, let's just take whatever wins we can get. No matter if they're not actually wins on the court, just look at development of guys. Can Terrence Brown continue to be the scorer that he is? Can James Okonkwo end up becoming, I think, a true viable Big 12 big man? Like, those are the things you're gonna have to monitor if you're Utah here. Whereas the losses, they're probably gonna pile up.
I've said it before. I think Utah gets 3 Big 12 wins this year. I'd love it if they get more. They got one against TCU. I think the other one I found was Cincinnati, and there's one other one on there that just escapes me. But this is a Utah team. They still have Iowa State on there. It's Houston. It's really tough in this conference. That is the best college basketball conference for my money. And literally, like, according to Ken Palm, I think Utah continues to be this single team that brings the Big 12 down the most. Maybe the TCU win helped them a little bit with that, but it's just rough. And I agree with everything you said about Alex Jensen. I think he is the right guy. I trust this staff. Wes Wilcox, Chilius, the assistant, does a good job. Yeah. It's just not the right mix. It's not the right talent. But as you said, too, they need the resources. Fans are still not showing up to the Huntsman. And that's not even all on the fans, right? And it's not even on the athletic department. People get mad at the athletic department. Who wants to watch the product? And I'm not trying to be mean to the guys, but when you lose by 20 at home in a lot of these games, it's not an enjoyable product. So they got to figure out a way to get the right guys, the right mix. Hopefully the private equity, if that goes through, can help with some of this. But unfortunately, going to be a long year, and I think a long night for the Rutted Utes.
At least you're not Arizona State and Bobby Hurley, who's saying that the home environment is sterile. Man, yeah. That was he's a dead man.
I was gonna say him saying something crazy. Bobby Hurley, what? Never.
This screams like the beginning of the end, and quite honestly, I just do wonder how much longer they will absorb just what's happening with ASU basketball. I know that it's kind of an afterthought down there that the Sun Devils aren't really a basketball school, but for him to call the home environment sterile and essentially all but sign his walking papers whenever that comes, man, that was pretty. But yeah, so at least you're not in that predicament. Speaking of Utah, I know that the Huntsman Center, yeah, you'd like to see more fans show up, Utah fans. I get all that if you're a true running Utes fan, but give it time. The product has to match the fans' expectations. And in theory, then they'll start showing up again. So we'll find out. It'll be interesting. Well, JT, on that note, for Utah fans, if you are a glutton for punishment, if we expect this to go the way it's going, we are going to do a live show at Chubby's in Orem. So if you are bold enough to make the trek to the Marriott Center wearing your red, come over to the Chubby's by the University Mall. Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12, myself, and the guys from the Loyal Cougars podcast, Jake Edmonds and Tosh McIntosh. We're going to do a live show. And I'm just going to say this, JT, I'm going to try and work you in. I know that you're working remotely on this.
Is this because I'm a glutton for punishment? Is that why?
You are a glutton for punishment. Trust me. You just look at the comments from the Big 12 squad. That's know
true. That's true.
I'm going to see if we can work you in and have some fun as well with this live show. We should be able to remote you in and have some fun and react to the game. But that'll be 7:00 Saturday night there in Orem. Would love any and all of you that are available. If you're in the area, come out, say hello, eat some grub. You get a free drink if you mention the live broadcast from our friends at Chubby's. Should be a really, really fun environment, even if the game goes the way we expect it to go.
Yeah, like I said, it'd be awesome. We'll see how it all works out for Utah. Depending on how bad the game is, maybe my Wi-Fi won't be working too. We'll have to see all
Sorry,
that
guys,
but that'll be
it's not working.
Yeah.
Well,
that's exactly going to be the plan, but that'll be awesome, Jake.
I think most of my fan base knows where they can find you. But if for whatever reason they don't know where to find your content, they want more about the Utes, where can they find you?
Yeah, you guys can head over to Locked On Utes on YouTube, on X as well. Utah football content coming at you all year long. Transfer portal still going crazy and trying to turn this thing around post Kyle Whittingham. We'll see how they're able to do it. Jake, always a blast being on with you, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want more Cougars content, Locked On Cougars, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, check it out on social media as well. Locked On Cougars, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. You can find JT and I also on social media on our individual handles as well. But thank you as always for making these podcasts, Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars, your second listen of the day. Now go make your first lesson of the day for us. Now go make your second listen of the day. Our friends over at Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin, doing a great job covering all things in the sport we all love. And as always, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.